quit my job. I quit my job after being forced against my will by the floor manager to shovel flamingo bowls inside a claustrophobic dark room with an oversized shovel. I can't do it, I told him. You can't do it, he said. I couldn't do it. Besides, the guy had been persistently coughing in the proximity of my face, and I did not even know what his COVID-19 status was. His top priority was not my health, but packing beanbags. Thoughts were racing through my mind. The Alto Venova is my passion, not packing beanbags for an inhumane and unsustainable capitalism agenda that cares little for the blue-collar workers laboring day and weekend to fulfill beanbag orders for very minuscule pay.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? How dare you continue to look away?
I quit my job after being forced against my will by the floor manager to shovel flamingo bowls inside a claustrophobic dark room with an oversized shovel. I can't do it, I told him. You can't do it, he said. I couldn't do it. Besides, the guy had been persistently coughing in the proximity of my face, and I did not even know what his COVID-19 status was. His top priority was not my health, but packing beanbags. Thoughts were racing through my mind. The Alto Venova is my passion, not packing beanbags for an inhumane and unsustainable capitalism agenda that cares little for the blue-collar workers laboring day and weekend to fulfill beanbag orders for very minuscule pay, considering the Herculean tasks of mass-producing, packaging, shipping beanbags for giant retail outlets and other fancy beanbag brands. I felt exploited and grossly mistreated. So I packed my things and left. What's wrong? Asked an Irish co-worker, David. I never use swear words, but I looked at him straight in the face and blurted out loudly, I can't take this shit. He grinned and I walked out, never looking back to that dungeon of a beanbag factory. All I want to do is to play the Venova and make music and make a living doing it. I don't mind a humane side job in the process if I get one, but I won't allow myself to be exploited ever again by an uncaring and unsustainable capitalism that only values my sweat, not my humanity. So when I woke up today on August 17, 2021, I knew I had to lose my Venova virginity. So what does that mean? It means I'm taking the Venova, the music, from just playing around, having fun. Of course, I'm always gonna play around and have fun with it because that's what I do. But I intend to take that, experimenting, playing, having fun, and also turn it into a sustainable and humane sort of business model where I can make a living. Maybe I can employ other people. I don't know, if it is God's will, playing this music. But I want to do it in a way that respects other people's health, respects other people's lives, not in a way that only cares about maximizing profits at the sheer expense of other people, as I have witnessed. I mean, there were some good things working in that beanbag factory, but there were also some dark things. People could be fired at any moment. Notice they could be sent home. There's no work because of whatever issues. And the main goal, as I discovered, was maximizing the profit, the bottom line for the capitalist, the business owner. And I could sense a lot of discontent amongst the employees, but this discontent was not given a voice, was not allowed to speak. And I know I live in Denmark in the 21st century, but these things are happening because the workers apparently, I was always wondering, there are people from Eastern Europe, from Romania, Lithuania. Of course, there are some people from Denmark, Ireland, different places, and I found out maybe because these people, they know they are foreigners here, and it's easy to maybe exploit them than to try and exploit the local people, so one can profit off their ignorance and of their fear. They are afraid to lose the source of income if they get it, So I've just witnessed that. And of course, in my communication with the boss, who communicates very nicely, and I suppose in many ways he's a very nice guy, he had his experience for Danish companies going to Southeast Asia, in the rural parts, he told me, in Malaysia and other places, to seek cheap labor, so that they could send these goods to Denmark and profit off the cheap labor. So he has an experience in cheap labor and exploiting cheap labor to maximize profits. And I guess the same business model is what he's using today in Denmark out there. And he's supplying the biggest, shops and brands in the country, and also in Germany and many other places. So I just witnessed firsthand an unsustainable capitalism that, in my humblest opinion, should be not be tolerated in today's terms, because it cares very little, in my humble opinion and experience, about the people who are greasing the wheels, who are really laboring. Most people, when they get their bin bags, they don't care or ask about, who are the people making our products. From now on, because of my experience, whenever I look at even the microphone that I'm using a Rode microphone right now, I start to think about who are the people who made the components, not the brand, because remember, Rode is just a brand, I want to know about the people who worked or subcontracted to work, because this guy is subcontracted by big brands and big companies to do the donkey work. Essentially, that's what we're doing. And these brands take all the credit and all the glory and all the profits, and he also takes a cut of the big profit. So I'm just saying, who makes your products? Do you care? So in playing my Venova, I'll be exploring some of these very humane themes. And in losing my Venova virginity, meaning I'm taking this just from a novice to go pro, I will be talking about issues like the exploitation of labor, the exploitation of other human beings for the sake of profit. That exploitation can take so many forms, and I think I will touch on some of those issues. And of course, my music always, at its core, I'm giving praise to the Most High, the one who rules over everything. And I'm also going to talk about the injustice that I see. I'm going to talk about the joy that I see, and many other things. And today, I went to Aarhus, which is the second capital city of Denmark. I live in the Aarhus area, so I just went to the city, and I used to live right in the heart of the city, but I moved to the countryside where my music started and developed out here in Denmark, And I met a guy at the train station. His name is Matthias, and he was giving people information about the city and stuff like that. And he said, "Wow, what's that instrument?" I said, "It's called a Venova." I said, he used to play saxophone. He told me he grew up in Ethiopia. He's a Dane who grew up in Ethiopia. And I don't know if his parents were, working in Ethiopia or diplomats. I don't know. But then he said, yeah, when I came to Denmark, I couldn't find a band, so he stopped practicing and playing. And I said, I think you should just pick up your saxophone or your piano and start playing again, just for fun. And, he let me shoot with him. He was very polite. I told him about an Ethiopian musician called Hailu Mashin, whose music I love and whose life story is also quite inspiring, because he went into oblivion and then he was rediscovered, and now I think he's doing okay with his music, in his old age, which I think is a very inspiring thing. Even though he was working as a taxi driver, and he still does that, I guess. But in a documentary I watched, he was talking about he doesn't necessarily need to do that. So many musicians find themselves in a position where they have to do some kind of side job, especially now with the coronavirus and so on. Remember, I'm not talking about those musicians in Hollywood, or I'm not gonna name names. I'm talking about the real musicians who sometimes find it difficult to pay their bills, to get from day to day. They just really love their music and so on, but maybe never get lucky enough to get so-called Hollywood big break, because we know those things happen to only a minority, but there are many good quality musicians around the world, I think. And we know that the streaming system of paying for music streaming is extremely also rigged by the capitalistic system. So only a minority, maybe 1 or 2% of the top musicians make all the money on Spotify. Even if I'm listening on Spotify to all these musicians who are not the major label musicians, my money somehow ends up paying those musicians. So I think the system is broken in many ways. The capitalistic system, whether it's in regards to making beanbags or, I think capitalism has many great advantages, but I think it needs to be reformed, because in its current form, I think it's a dinosaur, and I think it doesn't do much good service to workers. I hear about, in the press, when we hear about workers in companies, I won't name names right now, where, they get paid peanuts and their working conditions. I've read that some had to pee in bottles because they were not allowed to get off the assembly line. You can read about the story where people had to pee in bottles in a major corporation that everybody, even I have bought things from that corporation. But I think it's good. It's an efficient corporation. But at the same time, I think they need to take care of their people, to take better care of their people. I mean, what's the point of having one shareholder worth billions and billions and be one of the richest people in the world, when the masses of these people really, they could be treated fairly and decently and That's part of losing my Venova virginity, is I want to do it professionally and so skillfully that if I when not if I get that place where I will have a stage and I'm able to more people are listening to my story, I will always tell my story, but when more people pay attention, that they will realize you need to care about where the goods that you're using are coming from. How are the people who are making these things being treated? The human beings. Never mind their ethnicity or whatever, but they are people. How are they being treated? Because most of these people don't even have a voice. So this is me losing my virginity, and I had an opportunity, my Venova virginity. I had an opportunity to play at different places in the city just to try it out, because mostly I'm usually playing in the countryside and so on, but to really go out there and let me try and do this, of course. And from now on, I'm really gonna try to make this into a living, regardless of how complicated it is, with God's help. So that's what losing my Venova virginity is about.